Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. We have a special guest here today, Mr. Jack Turner, and he is the owner, co-founder.
Yeah, I'm the principal owner, founder of XSite LLC. We're a small systems engineering company.
Yeah, so we have him here to talk today about leadership and everything about it. So we'll start out as we always do, is if you could give us just a little background about yourself, and then we'll kind of go from there.
I was born in a small...
As much detail as you want.
Yeah.
I was born when I was 5.
My father was born in Kings, Ohio, which is where Kings Island is.
Oh, nice.
And then, I'm from Ohio.
Me too.
And I was,
Columbus.
And from the time I was like a tiny kid, I wanted to be a freaking astronaut. I want to be a pilot. That is all I ever talked about, period. Like, I asked I don't even know, she was making these ham and Swiss and onion sandwiches called Whizzes. And I asked her first, I don't know why this even keeps coming back to my mind, but it does. I asked her when I want to do it. She goes, you always bugging us about that. You know, you always wanted to be, a pilot. And as soon as you knew what an astronaut was, you wanted to be one.
Even pre-Top Gun, huh?
Top Gun ruined my career. And well, in a sense, it slowed my career down, but I don't think without Top Gun, I would have gone to the ship because all the quotas were filled. My year group was the same year as Top Gun. I graduated.
So everyone else.
So all these people,
sudden,
are volunteering to go to flight school. So I believe that there weren't as many quotas. But anyway, I went to the ship for 2 years, and I really grew up a lot on the ship. I mean, I grew up a lot. I worked for 2 LDOs, a senior chief and an HT master chief LDO that were now commander and lieutenant commander, and it was commander and whatever. But anyway, born in Ohio, went to school in Boston, got an aerospace engineering degree, hence the pilot stuff and the astronaut stuff. Like I said, in 87 or 86, Top Gun came out, and I was way into it long before freaking Top Gun, and I put in my selection and I didn't get it. I went to a freaking steamship and became an engineering officer of the watch and a M division officer. And I had some wonderful guys work for me. And that was, I learned an immense amount from my Chief Holtz. I'll know, you don't forget those guys, and grew up a lot. I got stronger, more fortified emotionally as far as being able to deal with, the stuff you deal with in the nav. 2 years in the time I was there, I think we spent 18 months at sea.
Wow.
And
what did those guys do for you that was really, kind of turned you?
It's a lot of incremental things, but people just investing in little bits into me, coaching me.
You didn't get aviation, so then you had to go to the ship. You probably weren't like in the best headspace.
I was not in a good mood about that.
Right.
Yeah, I called my uncle, who's kind of my dad kind of wasn't around when I was a little kid, and I called my uncle, and I was like freaking bummed. And
but then I got you get to the ship and you meet these 2 guys, and then they
the Chang and I can't get his name out of my head, but they just they taught me all kinds of stuff, and they were hard on me. They weren't nice to me about it. They were
tough.
Steve was rough. He was a senior chief warrant officer, LDO, and in Nam he had dug out bodies out of the gunboats. Was high all the time, drunk all the time.
In Nam. Oh, no.
Yeah.
While he's working with the other ship.
And he was, but he was hard. So, I can't even say, I don't want to say it on your podcast, some of the things he said to sailors about their families, that that C word didn't come in a C bag, and I mean they were hard, man.
So is it
They
more?
were-
So I mean, it sounds like you didn't want to disappoint, right? You're just kind of like falling in line and doing what they're asking you to do because is it fear or is it more just you wanted to get better?
I don't know that I wanted to get better. It was I didn't have any choice. It was either
gotcha.
It was either get better or suffer a lot.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and left the ship in an OPEO, and and the CEO asked me to stay and be a surface line officer, and I'm like, you got to be crazy. I'm sorry, no, I've wanted this my whole life, Yeah, but then I went to flight school, and that was pretty awesome. I wish I had like invested or had the money to go flying before. Because I didn't. I'd never been flying before. Like do something what I did today. That was character building too. I mean, I basically decided I was going to make it through. If they wanted to get rid of me, they were going to have to drag me away.
So you're on the ship for 2 years. You're learning a lot, and you're still applying to flight school. So is that how it works?
No. It was a really strange, stupid thing. An idiosyncrasy of the Navy and their manpower. So in 86, they were building up the 600 ship Navy.
Yep, I remember that.
I'm 59, so I'm probably a little ahead of you guys in your groups and whatnot. But they were building up the 600 ship Navy, and so they needed all kinds of pilots. They needed all kinds of everything. But at one point, they just put out this message, a very simple message that said, if you have an ASVAB score, which is the aviation kind of standardization test of this and this, and I did. It was their request was pretty, the bar was fairly low, like an average score, and you were physically qualified. You didn't have to have any qualifications, nothing. They didn't make you have an EL letter or OD letter. You didn't have to get warfare. They just said,
"Yep, let's go."
Boom.
Lowest price, technically acceptable.
No, it was more like just you were a naval officer. We're taking you.
Yeah.
And my CO was just livid, but I never really gave up on that dream of doing that. If that's what you're getting at, I don't know. I don't know what kept it going, because at the end of that 2 years and before that message came out, I don't know. I was a little bit lost, to be honest.
So you found an opportunity presented itself. You were ready to go. You jumped on it and Pensacola. Went down to Pensacola.
I went to Pensacola. Did the little 6-week thing you do. And then I met all these guys from Texas, and they're still my buds from Van Hoy, Van Scam is his call sign, and we all got a house in Texas and went to Corpus Christi, and that was cool. Texas and Corpus was the most fantastic place you could ever be stuck, because everybody was nice. Everybody was nice. It was the coolest place I've ever lived, because you could go into any bar, you go into a diner, a Denny's or something, and people talk to you like they've known you for,
That's pretty cool.
So it was really good. Then I went back to Pensacola because I selected helos. The jet guys had a year to wait before they went from primary to intermediate and fly jets. And I was like, God.
So they hang out
and then I
for
really
you?
didn't have
Yeah.
the grades for it. I was like, boom. So I went to helos, and then got stationed in San Diego flying the 60s. And
twist
that was
my arm.
cool.
Yeah.
Twist my arm. Send me to City Alpha San Diego. Yeah. Just flew in the squadron. I wasn't anything special. I just was I think a good divo and a good pilot, and did well. And then I met a girl, and I thought I wanted to be an airline pilot. So I had orders to VXE6 to fly the ice in Antarctica, and I gave that up to stay with my now ex.
Yeah.
And
So you just stayed in San Diego then, because is that right?
yeah, well, I went to El Centro because I thought I wanted to be an airline pilot, and I got King Airs. And that was a cool place to fly, because they do immense amount of training there. So I got rides in EA6Bs, F-18s, C-130s, 53 Echoes. And then one of my jobs was literally to keep the T-34 out of preservation. So I would just go take it flying.
Nice.
I mean, it was a legitimate thing, because if I didn't fly it, they had to preserve it, and it cost much more to put in preservation than it did to just fly the airplane. And then things went off the rails. When I got done with that, I realized I did that. I was telling you before the podcast, we were talking about flying. I did these back-to-back flights to Texas, and I just did not want to be an airline pilot.
That was after the Navy? Or still in the Navy?
That was while I was in the Navy.
Got it.
In El Centro, I flew, the primary thing I flew was a C-12. It's a little airliner, small airliner, or a commuter plane might be a better description. And yeah, I took these, leg after leg to Texas, day after day, and parts of my body were just going to fall off. And it was horrible.
Hey, you're saying there's not much to do up there once you take off and land. I'm like, there's in between. There's nothing in between.
On and
what do you do? Do you chat with your co-pilot, or are you allowed to?
You can talk, but you can't read.
You can't. Yeah,
you can't read. You can't listen to music. You can read like the NATOPS. You can read the plane's flight manual. Yeah,
that gets
so
old quick.
Boring. Oh my god, it was boring.
Are you close to retiring out of the Navy at this point, or
no? At that point, I just got out. I was pretty, I don't know, I felt kind of beat up from the Navy. The Navy is like a double-edged sword. It's like the best thing that ever happened to me and the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I love it and I hate it all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice, it really,
oh yeah.
Being in the military, traveling all the time and the conditions that we work in.
And telling people they have to die. That's always fun,
It's tough. Depending on the operational unit, what you're doing, absolutely can be very stressful.
I had to tell my guys to lock these guys into space, and they're gonna die, and I'm like, and it was an easy decision in the moment, but years later it haunts me,
Here's some background on that a little bit.
We had a main space fuel leak on the ship. I was the EL.
So these are your guys, These are your guys.
Oh, yeah, these are all the snipes in the other space. And Petty Officer Finley was one of them. The senior chief had jury-rigged a filter, and we needed it. We needed to stay operational when we were in the Persian Gulf. And they shifted the strainer, and fuel oil just shot out on the boiler, and it vaporized. It went vapor. It didn't ignite, but all I heard was, main space fuel leak, went out fire room, securing one. That was it. And so I'm like, okay, secure the space, cross connect 600 pound steam, secure the space and just isolate them in there. And then they're like, well, they're going to be, you can't, they're going to die. And I'm like, yeah. And but years later, it's like, you start thinking about that.
You're in your casualty procedures.
You go through is that like a protocol? You've trained.
It's just a procedure, but and then you realize what you're doing, and then you see Petty Officer Finley 20 years later, and he looks up at you, and you go, I'm really glad you lived, and he's like, me too, Mr. Wow. I saw him at the VA, and that really happened.
That's a leadership story.
No, because so the Navy's really good at teaching you casualty procedures, but really you don't really realize the consequence of what happened. Like if you ever
in your head, your spirit.
But that's the point, right?
Yes,
you practice it so much that
second nature.
The emotion isn't there until afterwards. Right. So you do the right thing according to the.
And it doesn't matter.
Well, it was the right thing to do. I mean, it was the correct decision to make.
No, right.
It was an easy
don't have
decision
time
to make.
Double
the ship
check.
was going to blow up and break in half and all that kind of
it was summer all, I guess.
And it was okay, boom, and
right. But it doesn't change the after.
It doesn't change the after when you go
right.
Those people were all going to die, and it just I don't know. Later, it plagued me. It really did.
So you got out
in '99. I got out, and I just got clean out. I didn't go in the reserves. And then I got a job at Navor. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was going through a divorce. I needed a job. I met this guy in top class, and I went to interview with him. And in that interview, he offered me a job. It was the only interview I've ever had.
Which for non-military people, that's not tap dancing.
No. That's transition assistance program. Yeah. And, he's still my bud. And I worked for him for about 4 or 5 years. At a company called Integrated System Control and then Maxim. And I talked to him about 2 weeks ago when we won the big contract and thanked him for whatnot. And then I went in the reserves. And then I had this parallel path where I was in the Navy Space Cadre and working at Maxim, working MRSAT and then MUOS. And then MUOS, I did all kinds of things. I did launch mission integration for the UFO, the last UFO satellite, which is the UHF frequency band satellite. that's used for tactical communication, not aliens, although people call.
So you were on the engineering side for that, like system engineering?
Yeah, I did this crazy cool job where we would do the pedigree on the launch vehicle and integration studies and things to make sure that the launch vehicle was, properly qualified and whatnot. And you do all kinds of stuff. Like they had significant studies on the batteries, like a little 6-volt battery that runs the avionics for the launch vehicle. You knew everything about that. We knew that the one guy probably smoked cigarettes and was a coffee drinker because the chemicals in the battery were. Wow. I was like, really? We're really going down, But I got to go to about 11 launches and knew everything about every vehicle that went up for that 4 or 5 years, and then I did modeling and simulation and system engineering support for the MUOS program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When did you know that you wanted to be a business owner in this industry?
Well, when I was a little kid, my father was an entrepreneur. My stepfather was an entrepreneur, and he wasn't very successful. I don't know why. There's no like cool path where my stepdad did well, and it was more like my mom literally tells stories about the sheriff coming to the house and the house was going to get repossessed and whatnot. Wow. But I was always inspired by what he was doing, even though it wasn't successful. It's a kind of a weird thing. Yeah, I've always wanted to have that kind of from when I was a young adult, not the same thing as being an astronaut and a pilot.
So when you were working at like Navwar, were you kind of looking at opportunities, or what was it? Yeah, what was that really kind of said, "Oh, I can do this," or "Here's an opportunity"?
It's one of those silly stories where every week I would go to Jim Lazell, who was he had been the program manager on UFO and then MUOS, and then he got out and he worked for Maxim and he ran the contract supporting MUOS. And every week I would go to him and say, "Jim, do you have any work in space, and whatnot?" And he's like, "No, I don't have any work in space." And then after about 6 months, he told me to stop. So every other week I would go bug him. And then I found my way into the reserve unit that supported them. And then they wanted me to go to some extra meetings in support of that. And then all of a sudden I was working there. I was working in that program office on the support contract. Okay. And doing something that was a launch mission integration job. I was doing the mission ops job where you fly the satellites out to geostationary with Naval Satellite Operations Center, which is all part of Space Force now.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't send any like Huskies or monkeys out there, like
no.
Steve Carell's Space Force.
No, we were ready to like fly the Navy blue messages and go. Yes, Congressman, it did blow up, and I'm sorry, and it cost $1 billion. Yeah, and
but like, so I'm talking like to start your company. So when you
so
had that opportunity
as an adult, when I got out of the Navy, it was it's kind of like the pilot thing. I didn't want to work for other people too much. I wanted to start my own thing, and then I had progressive advancements that got in the way of that. I was a program manager I was kind of an assistant program manager at Maxim, and then Accenture Federal Services bought Maxim. Then I became a program manager, and then at Accenture Federal Services, I became the director here in San Diego. So I had about 60, 70 people working a couple programs here.
So you're learning the business basically during this time.
Oh, yeah. Everything I could learn about the business, I did. And I made a lot of relationships with folks in the space and simulation, organizations. And then when I was at Accenture, I was getting to that point in my career where people, you're just not going to be brought on as staff at the age that I was, and it was kind of I either need to start a company or figure some long-term thing out, and then I really wanted to start a company, and that led me to found XSite with my
what year is that when you guys founded
it? It was 10 years ago.
10 years ago,
like last week, yeah. And me and a couple other other folks put the concepts together. And
how'd you get your first work? Like get it going?
Accenture let me take one little contract.
Okay.
And I was able to, socialize that work being moved to XSite, but it was just a tiny little thing.
Sure.
And then,
but you get to hire your first employee then, right?
Yeah.
Or just hire yourself, I guess even.
Well, I think before I was able to hire myself, I was on contract, but it was just a quarter time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was supporting the space cadre lead in PEO space, Dr. Clifton Phillips. On the MUOS program, they had some issues with MOT&E and accrediting the modeling and simulation. And the technical director called me and said, "Hey, are you on contract?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And then he told me what he wanted me to do, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I don't know if I want to do that." And
Can I go find somebody?
Yeah,
So then you call the HR rep, which is probably yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, but it needed to get done. It was important for the program, and it was very useful to us. And so that's how I got my first gig, and then that's pretty much led to all the work I have now. Mm-hmm. We're building a planning tool for Space Force based on a lot of that work, and it's so much more than we ever envisioned it in the beginning. Yeah. But to take a step back and talk about starting a business and creating that, what it's, I can't say that I felt this way in the beginning, but what it's become for me, I make it a point that I interview everybody that comes in the company. And the reason I do that is, one, for them to get to know me, to know that they have a clear path of communication to me, especially if something's going wrong or they need help or whatnot, or they're just troubled, but to communicate to them what we're trying to create, and I think that's the entire success of the company so far. And, we got a long way to go before we say we're really super successful, but we haven't had anybody leave that, of the junior people. I have software developers that have been there for 3 years, junior people, and other people are losing them to their jobs. And when I go to have lunch or take them to dinner or something, and I say, "What can I do for you guys?" This one kid, his name's Ryan. He's just a wonderful kid. He turns around, he's like, "No, Jack. What can we do for you? What do you need? What do you need us to do better?" I'm like,
"That's awesome."
Well, I'm gonna have to go think about that, because I was thinking the other way around. He's like, "No, we need to," and simple stupid stuff like, instead of being for a Christmas party, same kid, he wasn't going to come because his brother was visiting and his mom and dad were in town. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Well, we'll bring him to the company, bring him to the party." He's like, "Really? I could bring him?" I'm like, "Yeah, bring your mom. It's cool." And that was my guidance this year. I called it the Ryan protocol.
And she ended up getting wasted doing keg stands. She was the life of the party too, right?
They were fun, but so now the policy is, if you're not going to come because somebody's with you, just bring them.
Nice.
And maybe that'll.
No, we had James on here, and he was talking about the culture, and I think you guys are doing a lot of really good things. And
yeah, I'm
kind of curious, like, from your perspective, it sounds like it's deliberate, like you're doing this intentionally.
Yeah, it's absolutely deliberate.
I love that part of it, because we interview a lot of owners, and the ones that are people focused on their culture tend to do really good things.
Yeah, I get rather emotional about it. I want to create a place where people feel, one, like they're in my family, and now we got to make money, no margin, no mission kind of thing. But we don't want to. What I've been telling people I'm interviewing in the last couple of weeks is, we definitely, it's important to do good delivery, okay, but you being okay is a requirement of that delivery. Their well-being needs to be part of that success, and then they know that they're, at least that I'm trying to do that.
That's kind of simple. It's a servant leadership kind of mentality.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah, no, we I don't know. No, we're completely aligned. Yeah, Aaron and I are completely aligned with you. We believe in taking care of people, and servant leadership. You give them what they need to be successful. And then everything else will follow after that, right? And so, we're very people focused.
And really interested, I think, in the recipe behind it, right? So you're doing a lot of things just by default, because from what I gather, you're a very people focused person. You care about the individuals that you work with, and you want to see them be healthy and have good well-being, right? Which is both.
It'd be
physical.
Miserable to me if we were, I made $1 million to go buy an airplane, and I'm, whatnot, and Ryan has nowhere to go when the jobs are all done, or has sacrificed him so much that he doesn't have a wife and kids, or, whatever he wants to have as a life,
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's science behind why the stuff you're doing is working. Cool. So that's where we kind of come in. That's actually what I've been doing. When you ask, what's going on, I'm working on a PhD right now in organizational psychology, but it's being able to take those things that you're doing and understand why, so that it can become repeatable. And that we can help others do the same thing, because not everybody's got the same, upbringing and focus.
Yeah, I don't know why I feel that way, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not like I can point at one
after getting beat up by those guys at the beginning of the Navy, and I
should be a real jerk. Steve, I even had dinner or I had lunch with Steve, the Chang, and he literally said to me, "Yeah, if you could survive us, you'd probably do okay."
I was like, tolerance,
like. Yeah, that's true, Steve. But
or maybe it's because of that. It's there's the story of the two twins that were raised by a dad who was deadbeat and gambling problems and drugs and everything else, and one of the sons ended up in jail just like his dad, and the other was a lawyer and successful family and everything. And when they interviewed the two kids and asked them, "Why do you think you are the way you are?" they both answered the exact same way. They said, with a dad like this, how could I be anything else?
All right. What choice did I have?
Right. Yeah. It's just that mindset of perception.
I think that's the, as you make me think about it, the recipe, if I made one, would be, one, you get what you focus on, you get what you think about, you get what you invest in emotion and energy and whatnot. So, keeping that end in mind, that I want to create that, is super important for everybody in every little thing, from driving to work, to going to the grocery store, to having a good experience at Costco, to forming a business, to having a marriage. You've got to, you got to be thinking about what you want to create and seeing in your mind a positive view of that. If you walk around miserable and like, oh, this isn't going to work, and I'm never, I'm going to have oh my God, because I'm going to probably go to Costco after I leave here. So go to Costco, and like, and it's going to be crowded, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to be happy, and I'm going to be nice to people, and I'm going to make it a good time. I think that's just wicked important.
Is that the Boston coming out though?
The what?
The Boston.
Yeah. So that's what Covey calls proactive. Choose your attitude.
I'm a Covey fan.
You can choose your attitude.
Yeah,
it's totally true.
Keeping the end in mind, and then The other thing with organizations that I've been investing a lot of energy into is, one, you've got to hire people, good people, and people that are good at what they do. But if you don't trust them, and I don't mean like you trust that they're legal, like they're going to be honest. I mean, you got to allow for some room for them to make mistakes, give them permission to ask for help, let them know, look, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to mess some things up, and we're going to get through it, and we'll work. When you put it in their hands to accomplish and to create something, and don't micromanage them, and don't, and if they come to me and ask me for my input or my thoughts, I'll give them my input and my thoughts, but I don't tell them how to do it. I'm like this. I go, well, you might want to consider X, Y, and Z, but it's, this is yours, and so they own it, and they know they need to create it, and for whatever reason it works better.
Right. And then once they develop whatever, complete that project, now they get the sense of like, I can do it, right?
I can do it, and it's mine, and look what I created for the company.
It's autonomy and competence.
And then so all of that, you're creating this whole psychological safety, right? That's a kind of a buzzword that's going around. But also, you started off earlier with, when you interview people, you bring them into your family. That's the relatedness part of it. So you're describing all the things, what makes an optimal motivational environment. And so you're doing it. And that's, again, when Aaron and I talk to folks, we kind of label it for you so you can understand why it's working.
Yeah,
but it's all that sense
of words for it.
Your sense of relatedness, the sense of community that you're building, the sense of autonomy. It's probably the most important thing, is giving them the sense of not freedom, but the ability to make choices. And then the consequences come, good or bad, with that. It's all within structured bounds. But then the last one we talked about is just the sense of like, I can do it. I'm getting better at it. And when you couple all three of those together, you've got this really cool, high performing environment that's sustainable over time.
Yeah, I think that's what's coming together in the.
That's why nobody's left.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
No, 100%. Yeah. No, I can tell you the science.
You're telling me, okay, cool.
Because we look at it when we do some consulting work, and typically companies or organizations have a hard time. It's because of attrition. People are just leaving. They can't keep them, and that's expensive when somebody leaves, right? And I can guarantee you, 99 times out of 100, it's because they're missing one of those three elements, if not more than one of those elements. And that's what we can kind of pinpoint what's going on there. So, Jack, you're amazing. Like you're killing it. You're killing it. It counts, and I don't want you to don't downplay it because
it cry. You heard I cry, right?
Well, we didn't get to your call sign. I do want to hear the call sign.
Well, the call sign was Van Scam. I'm watching after a night of going to tea houses and tea parties and. With Van Scam and Pico and Utley, my Marine Corps buddies from flight school. I was watching Sally Struthers, in the morning, sipping my coffee, and like tears were running down my eyes. And Pico's like, "Can I cuss?" Like Pico,
yeah, go.
Pico, sure. Pico's he was from the Bronx. He was from New York, and he was like
New York
really
hard.
From New York. Oh God, yeah. Yeah, and Pico and Utley, and then Van Hoy comes out, and he's like, and we call him Van Scam because he was always scamming. Like, you fucking crybaby, what are you doing? You're crying over Sally Struthers? Like, quit crying about that. And it made me I was so mad at him. Oh my God. Like, I think I got really happy that night, and I think I kicked. Yeah, there was tequila involved.
Yeah. And, so when they gave you the name, would they?
Well, then Van Hoy, Van Scam, he just goes, we're going to call you emo.
Emo.
Emo. Like, yeah, most people think it's like that electronic thing or the silly Muppet.
Yeah.
But no, it's because I'm very emotional. My daughter was even like, giving me hell about it.
Yeah.
But
what's
anyway.
that show where the guy's you see him watching TV and he's crying, whatever, and then it comes over and it's a commercial for.
Oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, easy. Yeah,
those Humane Society commercials just get you every time, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, their strength and vulnerability and being able to.
Totally.
I used to get upset about it, and somebody was making fun of me from AFCEA, and I told that story about one of the kids that we give a scholarship to. Like she's lives in a car, tutors other kids, gets a 4.0, is still in a couple clubs, so she's got extracurriculars. Right, she was accepted to this really nice university. And we couldn't give her a scholarship because she didn't rate. Right?
She's doing everything right.
So I pulled over I'm bawling, and the lady that runs it for us, she called me and she's like, "Is there anything we can do? We don't have the $8,000 to give her a scholarship." And I'm on the Balboa crying, And I pulled over and called David Inman, and him and his wife donated specifically for her. Shout out to David Inman. He's wicked cool. He's a Marine. But he has a big heart. Yeah, but whenever I talk about it, I start bawling. But here's the kicker. That's not what makes me cry. Why does she work? Why does this kid work at Vaughn's, bagging groceries? Why does she do that? Because her father, who has a job at Vaughn's, will come to work instead of dropping heroin.
Wow. Wow.
That's why she goes to work. She works there. And I'm like, you do what? She's like, yeah, if I go to work, he shows up.
Very selfless.
Yeah. I was like, so, if you don't cry over that, you're dead. You just don't have a heart.
Yeah. That's a great story. That's a great story.
Empathy is a good trait to have, I think. Yeah. So just to put a little structure to these interviews, I've got two questions for you that we're going to ask everybody. So the first one is, how do you define leadership?
Oh, gosh. Well.
Having done it for many, many years.
I mean, I'm leaning on the things we already talked about. The making sure people know that they need to be that their well-being needs to be part of any success. Empowering them to that they know they own it, and like we were just talking about, we kind of went over a lot of that. There's a real subtle thing there that I didn't really perceive for a while, but it's not as simple as like just giving them the resources and telling them they own it. There's something that happens when someone knows that no one's going to be checking up on them. Checking up on them, or not QA, because we do that.
Like directing.
More caring.
But yeah, but when they know that they're going to get positive feedback as opposed to just if it's messed up, they're going to get slammed. Right.
Yeah,
when they know they're going to be supported.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
As opposed to just, that's terrible. You that sucked. You failed, When they know they're going to get positive or constructive feedback, they just do better.
Yeah.
They create something because it's theirs and they have ownership of it. And,
it's almost like you're mentoring them.
What's that?
It's almost like you're mentoring them.
I guess I am. Yeah. I guess that's what it is. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm. I don't know.
I think you said it best. They're being supported and doing that, and that can come in
a positive, constructive way, as opposed to slamming people when they catching them when they do things wrong.
That was terrible. What are you doing?
Yeah,
nothing like that.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. I mean, I even apply that to my kids and trying to get them to do the dishes.
Parenting's the same.
And go, my son's, he's 15-year-old, 6'1" water polo, kid, right?
But he didn't get the height from you, huh?
He did not get height
he
from me.
He could take you out if he needed to, right?
Yeah, well, that's not true. I outweigh him by about 30, 40 pounds. It's not all fat, okay? Just to be clear. I was me too. I didn't talk about hockey. I was an enforcer in hockey, but that's another story for another time. I try to reflect on the fact that he's caring. He's kind to strangers. He's kind to his buddies that aren't doing well. He's inclusive of people who aren't, And so then when he doesn't clean the bathroom, you give
him a little slack.
And I'm like, all right, you need to clean the bathroom. But I come at him with this, appreciative, loving kind of energy versus, clean the bathroom.
But that's harder though. Doing that.
It's so
much hard. Yeah, it is. No, you're right. But I think it works in the long run.
It works in the long run.
Yeah, it really does.
For sure.
That's good. I think that's a big aspect of leadership in general, is being able to see people for the good that they are and not for the bad, right? That's going to change your whole paradigm on how you work with people. If you're seeing them as good people who, sometimes do things you don't like versus not so good people who, you got to coerce into doing
everybody
things
comes to work and everybody gets up in the morning. I don't care how bad you are, Everybody gets up in the morning or nobody gets up in the morning and says, I think I want to be a jerk.
Right,
today.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's
I'm going to do a bad job.
I'm going to do a bad job and I'm going to be a jerk.
That's right.
They don't do that.
So we've already kind of talked about, your background, obviously, and some of the things that have shaped you as a leader, but how do you see yourself as a leader? How would you describe your, leadership style, or do you have words for that? Or, we
just kind of
already talked about it. Yeah.
But,
or are there any very definable things that you haven't already mentioned that have really made you who you are and, kind of created you as the leader you've become?
I think for me, I mentioned it before, but to reiterate it, to make a point, if XSite made me a bunch of money and the work we did was and the people were all left, kind of on the side of the road, and God forbid, if anybody ever said something like, yeah, they screwed me over when I left. And, there's not everybody's going to be happy with the way things exit in a transition or an exit strategy, or a change of control when the company's sold or something. It would break my heart if people thought about it as drudgery and misery, or they were just used, I have one person that's been with me the longest time, and I literally have this vision in my head of his daughter's 12 years old. I want her to be so happy with what I created for him that she invites me to her wedding, right? Yeah. And he's like, well, you're already invited to the wedding. But
whether she did or not, right?
Yeah, whether she even likes it or not. But
that's the community. I love it.
Yeah, but that's a silly little mantra I have in my head. And I I don't have as definitive visions like that for everybody, but creating that kind of place to work and that kind of, yeah.
So as you grow, what's in store for XSite along these lines of supporting people? Have you thought about, how that might change as you grow? And...
There's a lot of pressures and on, as a small business owner to, do what we've seen a lot of the community do with the businesses. They get somebody to buy them and then they become part of that giant, thing. And, Accenture did a wonderful job buying Maxim,
Okay.
I, not a plug for Accenture, but I really appreciated what they did and how they brought us in, and they were at least trying. Not even at least they were succeeded in integrating us, and I learned a lot about how to behave when you get acquired, and to if you're getting acquired, you need to think about it from the acquirer's point of view and help them because they're trying to do good too. I hope Ryan, one of my buddies, investors, he owns a little bit of the company, and he's I'm like the 25th thing on his investment chart. Like, his kids will never even get to me when he passes away. But there's a lot of pressure to like do some kind of sale like that or something. And I'm more of the mind like, why don't we spin off a couple companies and give, Ryan a shot, and
other opportunities,
and say, hey, let's take this body of work. Let's say it's the MBSE effort, and let's carve it out as its own company.
It's not a bad strategy.
And go, okay, we own 40% of it, but it's yours. And in that same vein that we were talking about of like being responsible and accountable and empowered and all that, going. Create what you want, here's the shot, I will probably get a lot of pressure to not do that. But if I could define it today, or if I had to define it today, that's what I would do.
Okay.
And, maybe spin off 5 companies and give people opportunities. Yeah.
That's cool.
I like that. Yeah. Taking care of people. Again.
Yeah. That would be, well, and, I would probably be very wealthy if that happened. I'd have my Vision Jet and my Jet Ranger. So.
We learned a lot in CSA as well as we grew, right? When I got there, we were, maybe 60, 70 people and got almost to 400. And one of the things we learned kind of the hard way, in my opinion, was the amount that the culture changes as you grow if you don't take action to define it and communicate it. Because what you're doing now, meeting and interviewing every person and creating that culture through your own role model, that becomes more and more diluted and harder to do as you get busier, as the company grows, and as more people are coming in leadership roles and also being influences on the employees. So and I've talked to James about it too, but keep those things in mind as you continue to bring those leaders and make sure they understand and being able to put words to those concepts and values and feelings that you've done of how people focused you are. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, taking an inventory of all of it and labeling it will allow you to replicate it.
And on the other hand, just being as people focused as you are, you're going to tend to bring other people like that when you hire them into the company.
You'll recognize it
and help build them.
So anyways, again, really appreciate it. We always like to end with a joke. And I've got one, if you don't, but you said you had something.
Oh, God.
Do you got any? A terrible dad joke is about as good as it gets. So.
Gosh.
I don't know if you have anything.
Know. What would a terrible dad joke be?
Or
my kids have this long, because I'm a little deaf from, all the flying and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll translate, but like I'll hear things that they think that I think they said. I wish I had the list. I'd read some of them, but they're like, they're just dumb as dirt. So it's not a good joke, but no, I don't have a joke that I can think of. You go ahead with yours. I'll tell you if it's funny.
Okay.
Because that's what my kids say is like, we really appreciate that you try to be funny, but you're not.
I like that. So I went to an Indian restaurant. Yeah. It's a really fancy one. And all their recipes are like super secret. And so just to order the bread, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, that's bad.
Get it? Non.
Oh, the non. Okay, non.
N-A-A-N.
Okay, non. Yeah. Okay, then that's good. That's good. Yeah.
No, it's not.
Not necessarily. I've got my.
I think I can tell that to my kids.
Yeah, they'd like it. Yeah, maybe.
I'm going to tell that one. That'll be
as long as they know what naan bread is.
I'll tell the one where the gentleman goes to Jerusalem with his wife, and unfortunately, she has a bad accident. She passes away. And the funeral director's like, yeah, it'll be 40.
So what I heard you say was she has a bad accent.
She had a bad accident.
Accent, and passed away. And I'm like, that's weird. Anyway, keep going.
She had a bad accident, and she passed away. And the funeral director's like, hey, it's going to be $45,000 to ship her back to the States, or you can bury her here in the Holy Land for $500. And he's like, yeah, let's go and ship her back to the States. And the funeral director's confused, like, why? I mean, it's the Holy Land, $500 saves some money. He's like, yeah, but I heard a long time ago a guy died here and then he rose 3 days later. I just can't take that chance again.
oh, that's just mean on so many levels. Oh, yeah, that's good. I can't take a chance that she's come. Oh. No, that's terrible. Bad.
All right.
We'll have to do it again. This has been great. Yeah.
You got more stories to tell? We can
I got go for part 2. Yeah. We could do or if you want to odd flying situations by Jack. That's good. Booger crying in the Sea of Japan. News at 11. Yeah. Booger.
Or if you want to promote anything that you got going on.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to say. So you're super active in all the organizations. Anything coming up?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the more subtle retired part of that. I'm on the board for FC of San Diego chapter. You want to get involved in the community and you want to either be a program manager or technology leadership person, if you want to just develop a lot of good friendships with people who I think are kind of like-minded with me. I mean, they're not always emotional, all that kind of hooey, but they're good people and they care about, each other. FCA is a wonderful organization. They have a happy hour. They have a tech talk and a happy hour that at first was incredibly resisted. Even in COVID, like they didn't want to do this tech talk. And I'm like, you guys are crazy this is the future. It's like this thing, Mm-hmm. And then that way, the young engineer at Navor or at, Accenture or Booz or XSite or what's the name of your company? I forget.
Intrinsic first.
Intrinsic.
Right behind you.
There you go. Intrinsic behind you. Right there.
Yeah. Don't forget it.
Don't forget it. They can be at lunch, chomping on a sandwich, working on an analysis, getting a report finished, listening to the podcast, listening to the tech talk, and then go have a beer at 4:30 when they go home, mm-hmm. as opposed to coming out, taking 2 hours, getting a rubber chicken lunch, spending $65 for rubber chicken, mm-hmm. and missing 2 hours of work. As a young, that doesn't add up. So that's right. When I was pressuring one of our younger folks to come out, she kept saying, "Oh yeah, I'll try to make it." And I'd ask her because I'm persistent, and I'd ask all of them all the young FCNs, and finally she turned to me and she's pretty outspoken young lady. She's cool as can be. She finally turned to me and she's like, okay, look, I'll be honest with you. First of all, I got to take 2 hours off work. Costs $65. It's the same damn talk every time. Somebody says something about, acquisition or technical leadership and okay. And I usually don't care. And then a bunch of old, dudes are like
bunch of white guys at a happy hour talking shop.
They're
in their blazers.
And she's like, why would I go to that?
Stereotype.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. So that's why we do the tech talk and then the happy hour. And I think it's been incredibly successful.
Yeah, we got to do a few of those.
It's good happy hours, good beer, pizza.
That's the simple one over by Balboa Park, right?
Yeah. It's a pure project on when I think it's on. It's one of the integral months or weeks of the month on a Wednesday.
Like third Wednesday.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, this has been great. A lot funner than I thought it would be. Right I was worried it was going to talk like this and not know what to say. So.
Just hanging out, really. Ignore the man behind the camera.
After a while, you don't see him, right? Like the cameras.
What's that? Oh, I didn't even. Didn't even occur. You do a good job of. Just making it comfortable.
Good, thank you. I appreciate that.
It was cool.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Cool. Jack.
Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.